The first time I saw the girl, I thought she was lost. She was standing between two trees, maybe 30 yards from my tent. I could see her because of the flashlight. But what I couldn't understand was why she wasn't moving. Not even a little. I called out to her. She didn't answer. So I took one step closer, and that's when she disappeared. I had been camping alone in the northern part of the forest for 3 nights. It wasn't a popular campsite. There were no marked trails nearby, no other tents, and no cell service. It was the first night I was alone in the forest, and I was feeling a bit uneasy. The only reason I had chosen the area was because I wanted somewhere quiet. I had been using a trail camera during the trip, not because I expected to capture anything unusual. I had simply placed it near the edge of the clearing to record wildlife during the night. Most of the footage had been completely ordinary. Raccoons, deer, a fox passing through just before sunrise. Nothing that made me think twice. That evening, I returned to the campsite just before sunset. I cooked something over the fire, cleaned up, and went inside my tent. The forest became completely dark within an hour. I remember lying there, listening to the usual sounds. Branches moving in the wind, something small moving through the leaves. Occasionally, an owl somewhere in the distance. Nothing unusual. At least, not at first. I was almost asleep when I heard something outside. A sound that made me open my eyes immediately. A single footstep, right outside the tent. I stayed completely still. For a few seconds, I listened. Nothing. Then I heard another one, this time farther away. I reached for my flashlight. I didn't want to turn it on. Part of me was hoping it had been an animal. But then I heard something else. A voice. A very quiet voice. It sounded like a child. A little girl was standing somewhere outside. I unzipped the tent slowly. The cold air hit my face. I switched on the flashlight and pointed it toward the trees. At first, I saw nothing. Just the clearing, the dark trunks, the dense forest behind them. Then I moved the beam slightly to the left, and I saw her. She was standing between two trees. She looked very young, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She was wearing what looked like a pale-colored dress. Her hair was hanging down around her face, and she was looking directly at me. I remember thinking that none of it made sense. There was no reason for a child to be standing alone in that forest at night. I called out, "Hey!" The girl didn't move. I raised my voice. "Are you okay?" Still nothing. She just stood there. I could see the flashlight reflecting off her face. But her expression was impossible to read from that distance. I assumed she was scared. Maybe she was lost. Maybe her parents were somewhere nearby. So I stepped out of the tent. I kept the flashlight pointed at her. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said. "Are you lost?" The girl remained completely still. Then I took another step, and something strange happened. The light from my flashlight flickered. Just for a second. The beam went dark. I tapped the side of the flashlight. When the light came back on, the girl was gone. I stood there, staring at the trees. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear leaves moving. I didn't hear anyone running. There was simply no one there. I walked forward a few feet. The ground between the trees was covered in leaves. There was nowhere for a child to hide. I searched the area with the flashlight. Nothing. I called out again. No answer. Eventually, I went back to the tent. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe I had seen someone from another campsite. Maybe the darkness had distorted what I saw. Maybe the person had simply moved away while my flashlight was off. It didn't make sense, but I preferred that explanation. Before leaving, I decided to check the trail camera. The camera was positioned about 50 yards from the tent. It faced the edge of the clearing. I took out the memory card and checked the footage on my phone. The first several images were normal. A deer at 11:42 p.m., a raccoon at 1:16 a.m., then another image at 2:03 a.m. I stopped. There was a person standing in the clearing. At first, I thought it was me. But it wasn't. The figure was much smaller. I zoomed in. It was the girl. She was standing between the same two trees, the exact place where I had seen her. The timestamp showed 2:03 a.m. That was only a few minutes before I had heard the voice outside my tent. I kept scrolling. The next photograph was taken at 2:04. The girl was closer. Much closer. She was now standing near the edge of the clearing. Then came the next image. 2:05 a.m. She was gone. I stared at the screen. I thought that was the end of it, until I saw the next photograph. The camera had captured something behind the tent. The image was dark. At first, I couldn't see anything. Then I increased the brightness, and I saw her. She was standing only a few feet from the back of my tent. Her face was turned toward it, toward me. I checked the timestamp. 2:06 a.m. I was still inside the tent at that time. I had never heard anyone walking behind me. There was no sound in the recording. No movement. Just the image. A little girl standing in the darkness. I went back through the previous photographs. The camera had captured the clearing every few minutes throughout the night. There were animals. There were branches moving. There was even one image of me inside the tent. But there was no girl. Not in any photograph before 2:03. She appeared in the first image at the edge of the trees. Then she moved closer. Then she disappeared. And 1 minute later, she was standing behind my tent. I spent the next hour trying to find a normal explanation. I packed up my things and left. I never camped there again. For a long time, I assumed the photographs were the strangest part of the experience. But a few weeks later, I showed the footage to someone who understood trail cameras better than I did. He pointed out something I hadn't noticed. The camera had a short delay between motion detection and taking a photograph. Normally, if someone walked through the area, the camera would capture several images as they moved. But the girl appeared only once in each location. There were no photographs showing her walking, no image of her between the trees, no image of her crossing the clearing. She was simply there. And then she was somewhere else. The first time the trail camera captured the girl, I assumed she was lost. The second time, I thought I was looking at a different photograph. By the third time, I stopped trying to explain it. Because the girl was standing outside my cabin, and I was inside. The cabin was deep in the woods, several miles from the nearest paved road. I had stayed there before, but this time, I was alone. On my first evening, I placed a trail camera near the edge of the property, pointed toward a narrow path through the trees. Animals regularly passed through there. deer, foxes, sometimes bears. The next morning, I checked the camera. Most of the photographs showed animals. Then, I saw her. A little girl standing between the trees. She was too far away to see her face clearly. At first, I assumed she was someone's child. Maybe a hiker had been passing through. I deleted the photograph. The next morning, she was there again. But this time, she was closer. The photograph had been taken at 2:18 a.m. The next image was taken 1 minute later. The girl was gone. I went outside and walked along the path. The ground was soft from recent rain. There were no footprints, no broken branches, nothing. That night, I woke up sometime after midnight. I heard a branch snap outside. I walked to the window and looked into the darkness. I saw nothing. The next morning, I checked the camera again. There were 3 photographs of the empty path. Then the girl appeared. This time, she was much closer. I could see her small body clearly. Her arms hung at her sides. Her head was tilted slightly downward, but I still couldn't see her face. The next photograph was taken less than a minute later. She was gone. I moved the camera. This time, I placed it near the cabin and pointed it toward the front door. I wanted to know if someone was actually coming onto the property. Before going to sleep, I locked the door. I checked every window. There was no one outside. The next morning, I checked the camera. The first photograph showed the empty porch. The second showed the empty porch. The third showed the girl standing at the edge of the trees. The next photograph showed her closer. And the one after that? She was standing directly beside the cabin. I stared at the timestamp. 2:41 a.m. I had been awake at 2:41. I had been lying in bed. The cabin had been completely silent. I hadn't heard footsteps. I hadn't heard anyone outside. But the camera showed the girl standing just a few feet from the cabin. I decided to leave. Before I did, I checked the final photographs. The next image had been taken at 3:17 a.m. The girl was standing directly in front of the cabin door. She appeared to be facing it, as if she was looking inside. The door was still locked. There was no damage, no sign that anyone had tried to enter. Then I saw the next photograph. It had been taken 2 minutes later, and it showed the inside of my bedroom. My bed, the exact place where I had been sleeping. I stared at the screen. The trail camera had been outside. It had been facing the front door. There was no window facing my bed, no angle from which the camera could have taken that photograph. But the image was there. And in the photograph, the girl was standing beside my bed, looking down at me. The timestamp was 3:19 a.m. I had been awake at 3:19. I was lying in bed, looking toward the cabin door. I never saw anyone. But according to the camera, the girl was standing beside me.